Huions kinda suck. And I know that's a really harsh thing to say, but honestly, Huion tablets aren't that great. They're definitely not as great as everybody is telling you in the hundreds of sponsored videos out at the moment. But you can't really be angry at these people, because they're getting a tablet. Usually a pretty decent screen tablet, so of course they're gonna agree to a sponsorship, whether it's a good deal or not. And as some of you may know, so did I! But I ended up taking my review for the tablet down. And that's because from day one, this tablet has been a nightmare to deal with, and I didn't want someone to buy one of these tablets because of a video I made. Because of the amount of sponsorships, I don't think a lot of people realise how janky these tablets can be. I mean, Huion's not exactly going to pay people to say their tablets suck, right? But that's why I'm here. I'm going to give you a completely open and honest look at Huion tablets, and my personal experiences with them. I'm going to mention the good, the bad, and the very ugly, so buckle up, it's going to be a long one. So, to start off, I want to say that I'd actually used Huion tablets in the past, before they started making rounds recently. I think it was around 2013-ish. I used the H610, which is just a regular tablet, similar to a Wacom Intuos. I actually wanted to buy an Intuos at the time, but I couldn't afford one, so I was looking into cheaper alternatives. And from what I saw, Huion seemed to be the best way to go, especially since the tablet was a quarter of the price of a Wacom. So I got the tablet, and it was presented nicely enough, but it definitely felt cheap, which, to be fair, it was. The pen would make an awful scratchy noise as I used it. It was really shaky to draw on, which meant I had to use a stabilizer on every single program I used. And there are a lot of issues setting it up because of how difficult the drivers can be when it comes to actually getting them to work. Huions are kind of notorious for having faulty drivers. And that's always been the case. I mean, if you Google Huion tablets, one of the first results is saying how the tablet drivers don't work. But despite all that, it still did the job at the time, and it was fine for about 2 months or so until it broke. I can't quite remember what happened, but I think the tablet just stopped working one day. It wasn't a driver issue, it was 100% down to the actual tablet itself, and because of that I had to buy a new one. But they were cheap, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But then about a month later, the pen for that tablet broke. So I had to buy a replacement. And then a few months later, the whole tablet broke too. And I remember I was going to actually buy a third one, but I thought to myself that it had been less than 6 months, and I'd bought 2 tablets and 1 replacement pen, and I was just about to buy another tablet. I thought that if this was going to be a regular thing with these tablets, then it would just be cheaper to save up for a Wacom, which is what I did. It took a while, but I got there in the end, and I loved it. It lasted me for just over 2 years before it died on me, but that's the average life for these things, so that was fine. So, when I saw that Huion was sponsoring people last year, I thought, oh god, not these. But I checked out a few of the reviews, and you know, the tablets actually look nicer than the one I'd gotten previously, which got me intrigued to say the least. They eventually approached me and asked if I'd do a review of one of their screen tablets, the GT156 HD V2. Now at the time, I really wanted a Wacom Cintiq, but I wasn't in a position where I could afford one. So seeing them offer me a new screen tablet was tempting, but despite that, a part of me still wanted to turn them down because of my past experiences. But at the end of the day, I wanted to give them a second chance. Maybe in the last 5 years they'd actually improved things. Maybe the hardware would last longer and the drivers would be fixed and they'd actually be decent, cheap alternative to Wacom. I could only hope at this point. When I got the tablet, I was pleasantly surprised. It was presented a lot nicer than they used to do. The tablet itself was sturdy and didn't feel cheap. They also included a lot of extra goodies with the tablet itself, like an art glove, extra nibs, a pen case, and to my release, there was a second pen as well, which was great as now I didn't have to worry about buying a replacement if it broke. Also, since the pens need charging, you can still continue working if one of the pens is out of charge. This seemed promising. I was there and then ready to abandon Wacom and just completely sell my soul to Huion. But then I plugged in the tablet, and that's when everything went downhill. The first thing I noticed was that the colours on the tablet were quite different to my computer screen. It wasn't the biggest issue, as it wasn't drastically different, but I can imagine for some people it would have been. Also, side note, but I found out that you can actually change the colours of the Huion screen by assigning a hotkey to control, holding it for 5 seconds, which will bring up the settings menu. However, this does reconfigure your hotkeys to work as arrow buttons in the setting menu, so make sure once you're finished to hold down control for another 5 seconds and it'll fix itself. The menu will disappear on its own. This isn't something that's in the tablet manual. I found this out by accident, so make sure you remember this. Anyways, as I began setting up the tablet, I was a little annoyed that to install the Huion drivers, I had to uninstall my Wacom drivers. I don't think I had to do this when I installed my Intuos, but that was a while back, so don't quote me on this. So I deleted my Wacom drivers and installed the Huion drivers off the disk that I'd been given. But then the tablet didn't work. The screen was on, but it wouldn't recognize it as a tablet. It was essentially just a second display. I tried restarting my computer because sometimes a restart fixes things, but in this case it didn't. Then I tried uninstalling the drivers, reinstalling them, restarting, and it still didn't work. I was getting really mad at this point because this was the exact same issue I had with my old one. But then I remembered how I fixed the old issue. What I did was I went to their website and downloaded their latest drivers because, surprisingly, the discs don't actually have them. They have really old versions of the drivers and the tablets just won't recognize them. So I did that, and at first they didn't work, but after a quick restart, everything was up and running. Finally, I could use this tablet, and you know, it was bloody excellent. Through this entire video, you will not hear me once complain about how the tablet itself draws, because it draws exceptionally. Like I said previously, my old tablet needed a line stabilizer for everything, but this one I don't even need a line stabilizer at all, it simply draws that smoothly. And I was having an absolute blast drawing with this, but then, not even a week later, I was faced with my first hardware failure. The cable had broken, but only part of it. See, how the wire works for the model I have is it's a 3-in-1 cable. So the power supply, the HDMI, and the USB are all wrapped around into one big wire, which in theory makes sense as it's neater and you don't have to deal with wires everywhere. However, you're then faced with the issue of if one part of this wire goes wrong, then the whole thing is ruined. And what had happened in this case was the HDMI part was completely knackered after only a week. The wire would have to be held at very specific angles to even register that the screen input was even there. But even then, it sometimes wouldn't always work. But the weirdest part was the actual tablet still worked. The USB was fine and it turned on well enough. I could still use the tablet to draw, but it was just a bigger Intuos that just drew a little nicer, since I couldn't use the screen. I couldn't even make my review at this point, because how could I sell something that was so broken? I contacted Huion and they were really understanding and sent over a replacement. The downside of this being that it would take 2 weeks to arrive, which was really annoying, but whatever, it was fine. I continued using the tablet without the screen until the replacement got here. And when I finally got the new wire and hooked it up, I was relieved to see that the HDMI part worked. But the USB didn't. It was the exact opposite of my last cable. At this point, I was beyond done. I messaged them again saying that the wire was broken and showed them footage of the issue, but they seemed a little reluctant to send over a second wire, which I guess was understandable, and I didn't really want to kick up a fuss, so I just decided to buy a replacement myself for the review, and then mention the issues I'd had. But when I got to the website, I was shocked to see how expensive the wire was. $50, which is around £40 for a replacement, plus £12 shipping. I was horrified. At this point, I was just so frustrated. I just wanted to use this tablet, so I bit the bullet and forked out the money on this stupid wire. Another 2 weeks later, and it arrived. But during that time, the other wire they sent me just decided to start working, and I have no idea why. I tried using it on multiple computers and it didn't work on them, so it definitely wasn't my computer that was having the issue, and it wasn't a driver issue either. It literally just out of the blue decided to start working. So when the new wire arrived, I didn't even bother to open the package, and I just continued using the one they'd sent me. And that was fine for a few weeks, and it seemed like it was all going well. I submitted my review and thought that would be the end of my issues, but then that wire broke too. Again, the screen display was faulty, but this time so was the USB part too. But it was going to be okay this time, because I still had the replacement that I'd bought myself. So finally I opened up the package and was faced with immediate disappointment. They'd sent me the wrong wire. They'd sent me one for one of the earlier versions of the tablet, and I double checked on the website. I bought the right one. I was really annoyed and sent an email to customer service, and they were really understanding and said that they'd send a new replacement, but I had to send the old one back first, and I had to pay the postage. £12! £12 to send back a wire I didn't even want. I was losing money on this damn tablet, and I kept thinking about going back to my Wacom, but I finally had a screen display, and it drew better than my Wacom tablet, so I didn't want to let go of it, because I was stubborn, and I wanted to believe it could be good. So I paid that £12 to send the wire back. So another 2 weeks later, and the wire finally arrived, and everything was fine, but then that one broke too. A few weeks ago, actually. Yet again, I bought another replacement, so for anyone losing track, this is my 4th wire, 5th if you count the wrong one they sent me. And even though I have a replacement, I refuse to stop using this broken wire. It'll work if I put it at certain angles, so I've had to tape it to my actual tablet screen to be stuck at this angle. And I'm not gonna stop using it until it's 100% completely dead and drained of every ounce of its energy. I want to go on as long as I can without having to buy yet another one when my new wire that I bought inevitably breaks too. Whew, anyways, that's been one of the biggest issues I've faced. But aside from faulty external hardware, there's also been a lot of issues going on with the drivers. But like I said, this is something that's always been kind of bad about Huion, so I'm not really as annoyed as I was with the cable, but it's still pretty bad. Sometimes the tablet itself will just stop working and crash, and I know this can be said for pretty much every single graphics tablet out there, but I feel like this crashes way more than my old Wacom did. Some crashes can be fixed by simply restarting the tablet driver, which is why I've had to make the tablet driver a shortcut on my taskbar, just to make things quicker when restarting it. That's an easy fix, that's fine. But then there are some really major bugs that means I have to restart my whole computer to fix them. Which is really annoying, as I work freelance full time, and it really eats into my day. I'm just going to list off some of the more annoying issues I've had, and ways I've found that they can be fixed or avoided, because there's a few. So the most annoying issue I have is where for some reason the tablet makes it so my computer feels like it's pressing down a button constantly. Most of the time it's the buttons like Control or Alt or Shift or Win. Sometimes it even pushes them all down at the same time, or a combination of the 4. It also sometimes presses down the middle click button, but I use a laptop so I don't have a middle click, so for the longest time I didn't know what button it was pressing, and it would make pretty much every program unusable. I posted this issue on Twitter, and fortunately someone let me know that it was in fact pushing down the middle click button. To fix the issue, what I had to do was assign the middle click to a hotkey and then push it, which fixed the issue almost immediately. Also, sometimes when I switch configurations for each program, it causes the driver to crash. What I mean by that is, you can save hotkey configurations for each program and then load them as need be. I use this a lot as every program I use has a different button for the brush, the eraser, undo, etc, etc. But by assigning all of those to the same hotkeys for each program, I can work more consistently. Wacom tablets do this too, however they do it automatically. Whereas with Huions, it's more of a manual thing, which is fine. I just wish it didn't cause my tablet to crash. Then there's another issue that's only really bothersome in Photoshop. For some reason, it makes it so that every single tool is the eraser tool. The select, the brush, the text, everything. All of it is just the eraser brush. And I honestly didn't know what was going on when this first happened. But I found out that there's an easy way to fix this, and that's by assigning the option switch brush to a hotkey, pressing it, and that'll fix the issue. There's also another issue similar to that one, but instead of switching the brush, it switches which display monitor I'm using randomly. And to fix this, instead of assigning switch brush, you just assign switch display. But occasionally when trying to fix this issue, it will in fact cause the tablet to crash and bring up a Chinese error message, which I assume means whoopsie daisy, we broke again, and I have to restart the tablet. But sometimes when I do this, it'll open multiple versions of the Huion tablet, and everything goes really buggy. I then have to close all of them and reopen them, and usually it's fixed, but sometimes it isn't, and I have to do a full system restart. Now, you may have noticed a lot of these issues are actually down to the hotkeys, and I've noticed that too. I use all the hotkeys on my tablet. There's 14 altogether in a scroll bar. And it seems like using them a lot just doesn't always like to agree with the tablet driver, which causes it to malfunction, which is ridiculous. I know others that use Huion screen tablets, but they haven't had any of these issues. And that's because they're all issues related to the hotkeys, and they use screen tablets that don't have any. So I'm just convinced that a lot of the major issues are down to that, and I really hope it's something that's fixed in future tablets. If you really want to buy one of their screen tablets, maybe look into getting one of the ones without hotkeys. It's unfortunate because hotkeys are really useful, but the sheer amount of issues sometimes just doesn't make it feel worth it. So those are the main issues I've had with my Huion tablet. But there are some smaller ones, which I will now list off. Ahem. Both pens have slightly different pressure to them. One pushes a little harder than the other. It's not a huge issue, but it is a noticeable one. I can't actually use the on-screen tablet keyboard in any of my art programs. I can't middle-click drag in Photoshop, which was my most used feature when I had my Wacom. There is a part of the screen that is just unusable because it makes the pen freak out, and the other day the screen just started generating white noise and I have no idea why. Okay, so now I'm done. Those are pretty much every single issue I have had with my Huion tablet, and that is a lot of issues. I've not even had this tablet a year yet, and I couldn't say any of this in my review I did, but to be fair, I think I've been pretty unlucky with most of my issues. But I do know a lot of people that have had these issues too. Maybe not all of them at the same time like me, but they have had them. When I posted the other day saying how I hated my Huion tablet, I was genuinely surprised at how many people said they'd experienced similar issues to me. So if you still want to buy one of these tablets after all this, you really do need to take into consideration that these are things that could very well happen to you. That being said, Huions are still significantly cheaper than Wacoms, and they do draw so much nicer than my old Intuos did. It's just a shame that they're riddled with so many issues. I'd say if you still want to buy a Huion after watching this video, firstly, make sure you do some research into the tablet you want to buy. Secondly, maybe consider either getting one of the regular graphics tablets, or if you want a screen tablet, just buy one of the ones without hotkeys, and maybe invest in a wireless keyboard for your shortcuts. I really wanted to like this tablet, I honestly did, but it was nothing but disappointment from day one. And the worst part is, I wasn't even that surprised. So, in conclusion, Huions kinda suck.